Well, hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bobbie and this is Bobbie Reads Tarot, and today we're not going to read any tarot. I know, right? I thought we would do a little something different today. I had mentioned in a previous video that I was reading the Dolores Cannon books about Nostradamus, and I asked you guys if you wanted to hear about this, and you guys overwhelmingly wanted to learn more about this. So I read the first book already. This is a series of 3 books. So it's Conversations with Nostradamus. We have volume 1. You can see I have all my notes. We have volume 2, and then we have volume 3. So I'm going to start volume 2 probably tonight. Okay. So here's some interesting stuff though, you guys. So I want to talk to you about what I read, and I'm going to say this is not for entertainment purposes. Okay, you guys, like we're going to speak some truth tonight. So I knew that Nostradamus had made predictions, and I knew that they were like kind of like doomsday predictions, but I wasn't really familiar with like exactly his whole background and the whole background of the predictions and the whole thing. So I got this book, and then as I'm reading this book, I am simultaneously researching. So like there would be something that would be mentioned, a prediction or something, a date and time history. I immediately go and research to verify. Okay. So I did a lot of fact checking so that you guys didn't have to. As always, do your own research, form your own opinions, always question everything people tell you, even question what I tell you. Go do your own research. But I will say that I stand behind everything I say in this video because I did do my research. So, when I first started reading these, I honestly thought that this would be extra content that I would do just for my members. So there's this option if you want to join YouTube channels, and I have exclusive content that's just for my members. So I thought this would be really good member exclusive content. But I have to say that once I really started digging in here, I thought there's no way I can keep this information from everybody. I felt immediately compelled to share this information and to share it on my channel where everyone can see this, and you guys can share. If you feel that this video is helpful, you can share this video. This is information that I think that people should probably be aware of. So to give you a little bit of a background, Nostradamus his name was Michel de Nostradamus, I think. I'm probably butchered it. But he lived in the 1500s in France, and he was very, very well known and well respected in his community. He was considered a physician, but back then, physicians were more than just physicians in most cases, and very much in his case. So he was a scientist and an astronomer and an inventor, and he was this very well-rounded person. And something I did not know is that he was very well known for the surgical procedures that he would do, and they were procedures that no one else could do. For instance, like he was able to reattach limbs where people had never had success because the blood flow was too much. They couldn't see what they were doing. Well, he was able to use these techniques to slow the blood flow and to put his patients in the state where they're not feeling pain because they didn't have anesthetic. These people are awake when this stuff happens. And so he was able to do all of these things, and he was being watched by the Inquisition because they kind of wondered if he was up to some kind of witchcraft because of what he was able to do. Now we can look back and say he was using hypnosis, and he was using acupressure, and he was using all of these other modalities, right? In addition to what he knew. And then in addition to that, I feel, in my opinion, he was an incredibly enlightened man. I feel like he was a prophet, like on the level of, the Buddha. I mean, the stuff that, well, maybe not on the level of the Buddha, but like the amount of information he brought through, it's incredible, you guys. So this is a person who was really, really well respected. And he was writing out these things called quatrains. And what they are is they are 4-line poems. And it is within these quatrains that all of these predictions exist. And he did just under 1,000 quatrains in his life. That's why we have 3 volumes of this stuff, you guys, because this is a lot. I did not realize what I was embarking on when I decided to read these books, but now I'm in it, so I've got to finish the journey. So so this is a man who was very well respected in his time, but they were kind of watching him because they're like, what is this guy up to? So he was writing these quatrains that had these predictions, but they were written in this very, very, very confusing way. And the reason he did this was so that he wrote them kind of in a puzzle, so that if they were found by the Inquisition, he could tie them to historical events that had already happened, or he could. There were ways that he could kind of explain away what they were by the coding and the things that he did within and the symbology. One thing I did not know that I discovered is that he uses a ton of astrological references. A ton. I wish I knew astrology, and I would really encourage, if anyone watches my channel that's an astrologer, please, I'm begging you, let's partner on this, because if I had an astrologer that could pinpoint times, we could actually probably get really specific. But here's the thing. I don't know if he's referring to traditional astrology or Vedic astrology, and that will make a difference in how these things are interpreted. So I need someone who knows Vedic astrology and traditional astrology, or 2 different people or something. I don't know. Or maybe if you guys can point me, if there's astrologers out there that have already done this, leave that information in the comment section down below, because please, because I really want to figure out when some of this stuff is going to happen. One thing I do want to say, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's what a quatrain is. That's who Nostradamus is. That's what a quatrain is. And that's what he put in his quatrains. Okay. Now, these books are books by a woman named Dolores Cannon. Now, Dolores Cannon is a very, very well-known hypnotherapist. She has channeled a lot of stuff and put a lot of information out. So she is the author of these books. Now, I want to make these videos about Nostradamus, not about Dolores Cannon, but I do want to address a couple things. So we are looking at interpretations according to Dolores Cannon. Okay, so when I'm reading directly from the quatrain, I will let you know. And then when I'm reading from Dolores Cannon, her take on it, I will let you know. So we'll differentiate the information we're getting, okay? But one criticism I do have about her book, and I'm sure I'll have the same criticisms about those 2 books as well. And you know me, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm going to be honest and tell you the truth. So criticism that I have is that she began this project in 1986. She very, very much tried to tie events that were talked about in these quatrains to events that were happening at the end of the Cold War and the late 90s. That's when she was trying to make these things fit. And there's a lot of end notes and things where she will do a follow-up and say oh, well, on this date, this thing happened and these people, and it's now with hindsight, it's that wasn't what it was. So I do feel some of these things I kind of skipped over, where she took the prediction and then tied it to something. I kind of ignored that because I don't feel like that's what they were talking about. I feel like it's stuff that's coming now. Okay. So that's my criticism. We got that out of the way. So now what I want to talk about is why I decided to make this content that's available to everybody on my YouTube channel and not just my members, is because this information is very heavy. Trigger warning, okay? If you have a hard time with doomsday type topics, this will trigger you. So just click out, be warned. Okay, this is really, really heavy content. But where it really struck me is I started reading these books just thinking we were going to get some predictions. And what I found was Nostradamus and his quatrains and the predictions that he made very, very closely align to what I have read about in the book of Revelations, which we've talked about, what I have read about in the Nag Hammadi, which are the scriptures, the holy scriptures that were not included in the Bible, but are tied to that time and should have been included in the Bible. This also aligns with things that have been said by very well-known and respected channelers and psychics. Daryl Anka channels Bashar, and a lot of the things that Bashar has said, very much like that Bashar has said is coming, is very, very much talked about in this book. The other thing that was like very kind of like a moment for me is I've talked about Ann Tucker on my channel before. Ann Tucker channels angels, and she's talks about some heavy content about what's coming up, about an earth rift and things like that. And this answers the question. So like, I wondered, what's the earth rift that Ann Tucker talks about? Because she says it's not a nuclear weapon. I think we have it figured out in this book. So why don't I just go ahead and jump in? I tried to have this arranged it's in somewhat chronological order as told by Dolores Cannon, but it might jump around a little bit, but I'm going to do my best to keep this as like concise as possible so as to not make this video confusing. Okay. And we will have multiple videos because there's no way I'm going to fit into this one video all of the things that I have to say about this. So we are going to go ahead and get started. And one of the lines that stood out to me, and this was a line that is one of Dolores Cannon's. She says, Nostradamus, she's talking about like why this scenario. So this scenario of how she got these, it's a little out there. Okay. So she's talking about like, you know, okay, it's a little far-fetched, right? Like the people are going to believe her. But she says, Nostradamus was only doing what every psychic down through time immortal has attempted to do, to warn others. Every psychic that has ever had a premonition or a vision of the future has felt this same responsibility, to try to stop the events from occurring by warning those involved in the hope that some way they may be able to take action to avoid the event that was foreseen. And man, that hit me because that is why I have my channel. That is why I read tarot. The thing with tarot is that, and what we're going to learn, and they talk about in here, is that the timelines are always changing. And so there are predictions that Nostradamus made that did not come true. It doesn't mean that he was wrong. It is good that they didn't come true. It means that humanity made a different choice. And in one of these scenarios that we're going to cover, it's actually, I believe it was like the Cuban Missile Crisis, how close we got to disaster, but then how man made a different choice and prevented us from going into a nuclear war. And that changed the timeline. Okay. Same thing with tarot. I talk about like when we read tarot, I'm reading the energy that exists right there in that moment. But if people make different choices, which they can, and hopefully they do, and they have free will, then it can change the outcome. And that is why this project came forward, was because they wanted to warn people so that they could change the future. And I think that that's a big reason why I do what I do in my channel, is that I want to share the information that I have, because you guys have seen my predictions. I've predicted some stuff that's not so great. And I have to tell you, I've never had predictions as dark as I have right now. And what's concerning to me is that my predictions for 2025 are rapidly coming true. So I had talked about an earthquake in Asia. And then right after that, there was the earthquake in Tibet that was like beginning of January. And then I predicted an earthquake off of Japan. They just had one the other day where they had a tsunami warning. Thankfully, there was no tsunami. California, I mentioned that the fire season was going to be exceptionally bad this year, and that California was absolutely going to take a beating. And we're already seeing that happen. And what's making me nervous is that the things that I've seen in meditation are lining up with a lot of things I'm hearing other astrologers, tarot card readers, psychics, channelers predicting. And as I was reading this, those same events are in here. So now you know why I'm wanting to do this, and let's look at like what information is in here, okay? So this talks about earthquake and volcanic activity. And you guys know I have been predicting earthquakes that have been happening, and I've been predicting volcanic eruptions, some of which we have had. And you guys know I've been talking about, I just feel around Yellowstone, there's going to be some kind of like lava, volcanic activity. And then I read in here and they talk about, now this is supposed to be the words of Nostradamus, but this is through a channel. Okay, so we're going to take it for what it's worth, right? This is not coming exactly from Nostradamus's mouth, but we're going to look at it. And it talks about, with earthquakes and volcanoes will be accidental explosions of the weaponry that is buried in the ground that is going to cause great emotional turmoil within your country and other countries. It is important they realize that if the disarmament of weapons comes about, that it will take place in the Muslim countries too. And this, so what this talks about, and he talks about further, is that there's going to be some things that happen that causes some chain of events. But essentially, when those things happen and they cause those chain of events, one of the things that's going to do is it's going to put different types of pressure on the earth. And we see this with, if the earth gets like slightly like, it's weird how like the earth can actually start to kind of lean. We're on an elliptic instead of a actual rotation. So there's some weird stuff with that where it can affect it. Solar flares can impact our seismic activity. So we're very susceptible, right? And what's going to happen is we are going to have volcanic and earthquake activity due to some things that are happening in the earth and the atmosphere that, we're causing, maybe external forces cause. But eventually what's going to happen, this is a prediction. I shouldn't say eventually what's going to happen, but what the prediction is by Nostradamus is that there is going to be an earthquake in the Midwest that is so substantial that it is going to severely damage the rocket silos, the missile silos that have the nuclear weapons that are ready to launch, that are ready to go. And what this will do, or could potentially do, is cause a massive nuclear explosion here in the United States that affects us and is completely accidental. Now, I don't know how accidental it could really be, since they know that this is a possibility. So the hope would be that there's going to be disarmament, right? Like they know this is a potential that could happen. This is absolutely a theory that could happen. There is a major fault line that runs through the center of the United States. It's oh my gosh, I forgot what it is, but there's a fault line that's due for a big earthquake. So that's one thing that they talk about in this book. And they talk about how, it's up to us. If we're sitting around waiting for someone else to come in and save us, then we're going to be really disappointed, because that's not going to happen. Now, can we save us from nuclear war or nuclear disaster? I don't know. But, if we can help put out some positive energy or do something, get involved, be active, resist, whatever it is that we can do to add to the solution and not to the problem, I'm all for it, because I don't want to see that stuff happen. All right. So along those lines, there is this other quote. And again, this is a quote from the channeler that's channeling Nostradamus. And it talks about, with a higher awareness, everyone can change their destiny by making people aware of the damage that can occur to their present weaponry system, by teaching them how to survive, by not having an importance on monetary gain, to be concerned with their spirits. So this is how we need to shift what our focus is and what's important to us. And I think this goes back to, I'm always telling you guys, make sure that you're prepared. Make sure that you're prepared just in case. Because if nothing ever happens, then you're fine, right? But if something does happen, what are you going to do? Right? But those people that prepared, even just a little bit, it is going to be so much easier on those people. And I feel like these are big, huge warnings, like warning, warning, warning. It's coming. It's coming. They told us in the Bible, and I'm not even Christian and I'm listening. You know what I mean? And now they're telling us here, and it's like, we can listen or we can turn our backs. I'm choosing to listen, and I'm choosing to share the message with you guys. And then you guys can determine if you want to listen or not, They do talk about spiritual beings coming through and making contact. I'm not going to go into that in this book just because this video is already running long and we have a lot of other stuff I want to look at as far as predictions for like end times. They're not really end times, guys, but it's going to be end times for a lot of people. So we'll address the extraterrestrial stuff in another video. So Nostradamus does talk about the Antichrist. And I always thought like the Antichrist was going to, well, when I was younger and I was like raised in the church, I thought the Antichrist was going to be like a real Antichrist. And then I started thinking as I got older and more like spiritual and philosophical, I started thinking, well, maybe it's like Antichrist consciousness. Like we have Christ consciousness and then like negative Antichrist consciousness. But I'm almost wondering if it isn't going to be a real person. And here is why. So I'm going to read you the quatrain, and then I'm going to read you the translation as the channeler says it. So the quatrain that Nostradamus wrote says, "The Antichrist very soon annihilates the three. 27 years his war will last. The unbelievers are dead, captive, exiled, with blood, human bodies, water, and red hail covering the earth." So now this is what the channeler is saying that Nostradamus is, how he's describing this. This refers to the Antichrist, the one, the power behind the powers at this time. He is not in power at this time. He says he's behind the powers pulling the strings. He has not made his move to reveal himself yet. He says he is like a spider waiting for his time. He will take advantage of the world situation to make his move for power, and he will succeed. But there will be a lot of terrible bloodshed and war in the process. The Antichrist, surprisingly enough, will refuse to use nuclear weapons to do this through conventional warfare. He saves the nuclear weapons for other unspeakable deeds. That's why he mentioned all of the blood and gore in the quatrains too. There will be so many people being killed that the burial details won't be able to haul them off fast enough. He says that everybody in the world will become accustomed to the sight of corpses. So that is really frightening. Now, we can choose to be scared, right? And be paralyzed. Or we can look at this as reasonable people, okay? And we can say, okay, that could be really nasty, right? If that does happen. This might not happen. This could be an analogy for what we experience. And life is like that. Life is often about analogies, and things can look very different. There's supposedly three antichrists. One of them was Napoleon. One of them was Hitler. Then there's supposed to be the third one. The third one is supposed to come up through the Middle East. It shouldn't be anyone that well, it might be someone that some people recognize right now, but it's not someone that we recognize as a world leader yet. This is going to be someone younger, again, someone coming out of the Middle East. And what they're going to do is they're going to rise to power. While they're rising to power, there's going to be a time going on that's called the time of troubles. And the time of troubles is essentially when the United States political system collapses, and which I think we're seeing right now. And then there are these things that happen that create a lot of really bad stuff in the US. It creates a lot of famine, a lot of things like that. While the US is busy trying to take care of itself, that's going to give this power the ability to rise up in the Middle East. And they're going to be able to essentially, potentially take over a lot of that area. And it essentially becomes a battle between good and evil, just like what we've read in the Bible. I mean, I could go into all the details. I'm not going to. But before people like start freaking out, I want to remind everyone that, these are things that can change. Things can change often. Energies can change. Like I was talking about the situation during the Cold War with Kennedy, when we were like on the brink of nuclear disaster. But because of the actions of Kennedy and Bobbie Kennedy, the brothers, both of them, and the people willing to listen in Russia, well, at the time it was the USSR, that is what saved us then. So the timeline for this disaster was actually, there was a path to it through then. But because decisions were made that changed the trajectory of the future, we avoided that. So just know that that could absolutely happen again. So it's like, don't start panicking or freaking out or preparing for Armageddon, because things change all the time, right? And that's why we need to contribute good energy so that we can help pull it back to the good side. All right. So let's keep looking at what else Nostradamus has to tell us. One thing that I found super great is that the channeler talks as like for Nostradamus about tarot. And I thought that that was so great, since this is a tarot channel and this we communicate through tarot. And I'm always giving you guys the symbology or the meaning behind the tarot cards, because I want you to understand, because they're so rich and they're so deep and there's so much symbology. And so I wanted to read this to you because I thought this was really great. So when I say he says, this is someone speaking on behalf of Nostradamus. So he says the deck of tarot is a very valuable tool. It is very good for developing your psychic self and your spiritual self, and it is good for communicating. In his day, many symbols from the tarot were used for communicating secret messages in correspondence. He says the tarot is very versatile and it will be very important during the time of troubles. Those who have any familiarity at all with the tarot will be very helpful, particularly working in underground movements, to help keep communication clear, because they will be relying on psychic communication as well as physical communication. The tarot will play an important part in both. And we were already on the right track, you guys, because we already are all about the tarot. And so I really feel like this is that synchronicity, right? It's a little sign like, okay, we're on the right track. We're doing the right things. Like we're getting our information from the right sources. Something else that I wanted to share that what brought me a lot of peace is this part that I'm going to read to you. And this says, he says that you chose to be here at this time. There is now a higher proportion of old souls in the world than there has ever been before, because the old souls will be needed to help the world survive. You will find them everywhere, permeated in the oddest places. The old souls will be in communication with each other, and they are the ones that will help things hold together and survive. And I have talked to you guys a lot. I tell you when we're reading tarot and it gets a little heavy that, I remind you that you chose to be here at this specific time in history. You knew before you came to this human experience, you made a soul contract where you came down and you said, I know what I'm getting into and I'm coming. They talk about how there are really two different types of people. Well, three different types of spirits or energies that come through. There are those that are the helpers that chose to come through this very, very difficult time to be the ones to guide people through the tough time, to show them the way, to teach them about spirituality, how to open up their consciousness, and to be the light, So there's people that chose to do that. There are souls that are just really adventurous and love a challenge, and they decided this was a great time that they wanted to come down. And so we have a lot of that energy here too. And then the third type of energy we have is a little bit different, and that is the energy of the souls that have karma to work off. And those are the people that are going to struggle the most. Now, do we all have karma to work out? Absolutely. But there are people here who have some serious karma that they have to work out. And when I read that, it made a lot of sense to me because, we're in this time where it seems like there's so many unhappy people. And, we see like in the MAGA movement, so much like anger and hatred for just, like things that shouldn't matter, like the color of people's skin or their sexual orientation or whatever. But there's so much hate. And when I read that, it's like, no wonder, because those are souls that are just full of negative karma that they have to work out. So it is a really tough time. Because that's what this time right here is for. So take some peace in knowing that if you're here, and especially if you're here on my channel, you are a helper. You chose to come here and you're here for all the right reasons. So don't have fear. Stand in your faith and know that you are here in this time for a very specific purpose, and let that be your light that guides you through the way. Okay. Something else that really stuck out to me in this was a quote that says, during the time of troubles, assassination of world leaders will become so very common that people won't even bother to learn the names of the present leader. And there have been some psychics who have predicted that was it Baba Vanga, I believe, predicted that 2 leaders would fall in one day. And I do think that we're going to go into a time of a lot of disruption. And I know that a lot of the people on my channel are very, very pro Kamala, as I was as well, and always will be. With that being said, and I know that there is a lot of fear, and a lot of people are really, really hoping that something is going to miraculously happen that's going to put her in office. And I would love that too. With that being said, I do feel like things are happening as terrible as they are. I do feel like things are happening right now that are fated. So what's happening right now, unfortunately, is what has to happen for us to move forward as a humanity. I do not think Donald Trump is going to be long for this world. I've said that before. I think that there will be another attempt on him, perhaps even a successful attempt. Or I just don't see him being around beyond March or April. So I do think we're going to see a lot of turnover. And then one of the things that I'm honestly thinking, especially after reading this book, is that, we could have, and I'm just speculating here, okay, guys, this is just like me just word vomiting on you, okay? But like, what if the 2 leaders that die in one day are like Trump and Vance? And what if it's because, we're gonna play the what if game here. What if it's because there's a massive earthquake in the middle of the United States that sets off nuclear weapons that, somehow kills both of them? Okay, then now who do we have? And so I think it's going to be like, unfortunately, I think that's what we're going to start seeing. It's going to be major stuff like that. And I think that the United States as we know it is not going to look the way that we're used to it looking. And I think that we need to prepare ourselves for that, and mentally and emotionally, and be ready. And, hopefully, again, what I'm saying doesn't come true, it doesn't happen, but I would rather you guys be prepared. I would rather give you this warning, because I'm telling you, I'm getting prepared. Now, I'm not out in my backyard, digging a bunker or anything crazy like that, but I have a lot of water. I shouldn't be saying this. Don't come to my house and loot me, but I have plenty of water. I have plenty of food, emergency foods that last a very long time. I have water straws, enough for everyone in my family. I also have a water purification system. I have multiple solar generators. The reason I have solar generators is because solar generators are silent. If you have a fuel generator, it's going to make noise and people are going to know you have a generator. Things like that, right? I have books in my shelf where I have like how to preserve food. I don't know how to preserve food, but if the internet goes down, I don't know how to preserve food, but I'm gonna have a book for it. I have a book of it's like a survival medical book. So it's like just this massive medical book of, it's like when help isn't coming or something like that. And I have first aid kits. I mean, like, that's the kind of stuff that I've done. I have a lot of candles. I have just where, like, if we have to hunker down for even a few months, we're good to go. I've got pee pads for my dogs, so I don't even have to let them outside, because if the air is bad, I'm not letting my dogs outside. So just things like that. Now, not everyone can afford to do what I've done, and that you don't have to do that. And I'm not telling everybody to go out and be crazy, but if there's something that makes you feel more comfortable having it, then by all means go do it. It makes me feel more comfortable having those things I told you that I have. Okay. My hope is I never have to use any of that stuff, that's just wasted money, just sitting there. But, if the power goes out, I have solar generators. If I want to go camping, I've got solar generators. So, I mean, that's the way that I'm looking at this. I'm talking with my hands a lot, you guys. Okay, so let's keep going, because this video is getting super, super long, and I still have a lot to cover here. Something that stood out to me in a very kind of nerve-wracking way is this specific quatrain, and it says, so this talks about the rise, right before the rise of the Antichrist. It talks about during the time of trouble. And it says, the wretched, unfortunate republic will, this is Nostradamus's words, okay? The wretched, unfortunate republic will again be ruined by a new authority. The great amount of ill will accumulated in exile will make the Swiss break their important agreement. So Swiss has had neutrality for a very long, 500 years? A very, very, very long time. So the channeler is channeling Nostradamus and says, as a result of this will cause of what's going on, this uprise of Nazism is what they're talking about. So they're talking about how the Nazi party is, and that type of energy is going to come back into power. We're seeing that. We're seeing this huge shift to the right in all of these countries. That's why I'm like, you guys, this stuff, just be ready, because this stuff is lining up. So Switzerland has broken her neutrality. They're no longer neutral. They have backed Ukraine. So we're starting to see this stuff continue to unfold. We've seen a lot of things already unfold. Now, are there things he's predicted that has not come true? Like I said before, yes, absolutely, absolutely. That's what we want. We want them to not come true because things have changed. But a lot of his quatrains have multiple meanings and can apply to multiple periods in time because we are on cycles. So just because it misses one cycle doesn't mean it's not going to come back and hit the second. Okay. So this talks about the war weaponry and the things that we can expect during the time of trouble, which I would believe in would be like the tribulation in the Bible. And this says there will be an earthquake that will be triggered by a weapon that is currently being developed in a secret underground laboratory. He cannot put across the images of how this weapon works, for the concepts are not present in his vocabulary, and they're not present in this vehicle's vocabulary either. It apparently will be working on some scientific principle recently discovered that has not really been developed yet. So the concept of it is not generally available to be learned. So what this talks about, oh, here we go. So it's something that is projected like a laser ray. But whatever the actual operating point of, it's a spear that works like a laser ray. It's airborne. Some extension of the device is carried in a plane, and the plane must fly over the area where the earthquake is to be, or at least fly over the area where the earthquake must be triggered, regardless of the air. So basically, they're talking about weapons that people can use that will trigger earthquakes. So, and they go on. This gets really doomsday-ish. I don't know that I want to read like a ton of this, but essentially they talk about a couple different weapons, and they talk about a laser. They use the word laser. That's because, you know, that was the only word he had. But he talks about a weapon that like shoots a laser that causes massive issues within our environment. And then they also talk about that earthquake that would then potentially trigger a nuclear explosion. In Ann Tucker's book, she talks about a flash of light followed by 3 days of darkness where everyone has to stay inside. And to me, that aligns with either a weapon that shoots a light, because she has said it is not a nuclear explosion. She does not feel it's a nuclear explosion. Nostradamus has said that there will be nuclear explosions, but we're not going to see like the massive ones, like a catastrophic, like a mega bomb. We're not, supposedly, that's not where we're going with this. Okay. So that is what really like got me when I started reading about the weaponry, because it is what she is describing. The way that she's described it, she like sun, solar flare energy, but I'm wondering if the weapon that they're going to use is a solar powered weapon that gets energy from the sun. And so that's who that correlation is. So, you know, we'll just have to wait and see, and hopefully we never have to see, but I do think that's the connection between those. Something else that I was really curious to look into is there's a whole section in this book called the Cabal. And there are all kinds of quatrains that Nostradamus wrote that essentially refer to a secret group of people that are pulling the strings, that are never seen in the front. So they are pulling the strings. They're the puppet masters. So for instance, this says, without either foot or hand, with strong and sharp teeth through the crowd, to the fortified harbor and the elder born near the gates, treacherous, he crosses over the moon shines but little, great pillage. And this is talking about a group of essentially puppeteers or puppet masters behind the scenes, pulling the strings of the figures on stage and changing the scenery as needed. So this is really like basically everything that we see happen in the world. We're seeing other people that are controlling this, and we're kind of at their whims. It talks about how, you know, when we see inflation in the economy, or when we see interest rate, whatever, prices go up at the grocery store, it's because of these people. I mean, it's the businesses and everything else, right? But at the tippy top, it's those people. And I have said it, you guys, you know, I'm always like tinfoil hat time. And I talk about like the people, the uber rich, the Standard Oil family, the, JP Morgan family, the Rockefellers, all of those people, the people that have the old money, the people that helped fund Hitler's rise so that there would be wars, so they can make all kinds of money. These are the people that are pulling the strings. So those warmonger people are really the ones running the show. And I know that that's scary, but don't be scared because it's not something that just happened. Okay. I don't want you to hear this information and be like, that's terrifying. Yeah, it's terrifying, but it's nothing new. It's been this way your entire life. You just haven't known it. Maybe some of you have known it, but for me, like until I learned this, when I first learned it, I had some anxiety, but then I realized it's nothing new. I'm just aware of it now. So try to keep that in perspective, if that kind of freaks you out a little bit. Freaks me out, but I mean, look around, look at Zuckerberg, look at Bezos, look at Musk, look at how they're acting. They're doing it right in front of us now. This used to be done behind the scenes, and now they're just doing this out in the open. Like they're not even trying to hide it anymore. With all of this scary stuff being talked about, I do want to end this video on a positive note, and I found this fantastic. So this is referring to one of the quatrains, and the translation is, the lady no longer adored refers to the fact that the female aspect of deity or gods has been neglected, rivaled, and ignored. And when the time of peace comes after the Antichrist, this lack will be made up. For in the early days, the female aspect of the deity was worshipped. The masculine aspect was also worshipped, but as being subordinate to the female aspect of the deity. So this talks about a shift of bringing the feminine back. This is the Queen of Swords, you guys, that we keep getting in all of the tarot readings. It's the return of the divine feminine. This makes perfect sense when I read this. It's like, because it makes so much sense. Female goddesses were just as, if not more so, worshipped than male goddesses or male gods. Look into Sophia or Sophia Pistis. If you don't know about Sophia, Google Sophia, go down the rabbit hole. She's the original woman in the Bible. Yeah, she's like God's equal. So check that one out because that story is crazy, but we're not going to talk about that here. The final thing that I do want to say is that even though this looks very, very bleak, okay, and I do feel like we're headed towards it, I do want to say that this book does not end with a complete and utter destruction of man or mankind. No, it does not. It's pretty bad. I'm not going to lie. But there's also a lot of people that get through it and that get through it to make it a better world. And when we get to the other side of it, it is amazing. There will be leaders who will rise up, who will have the needs of the people at the forefront of what they do. There is someone who is the genius who is supposed to come forward and bring forth all kinds of new technology and things that can help us. And there is so much development and so much amazing stuff that's coming right after this. So we're going to have several rough years, but I know that all of us that are like ready for it, the spiritual people, the ones that are going to help guide everyone through this, and we're going to be okay, and we're going to help others be okay. We're going to get through this, and we're going to get to the other side, and the other side is amazing. So that is what gives me hope. I know I'm going to be one of the people that like makes it to the other side, and I'm going to be there, and all of you are going to be there, and it's going to be great. So This video has gotten extremely long. I hope you guys like this and you stuck with me. If you do like this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It's a super great way to help out my channel. Also, if you have not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing. It really helps out my channel as well, helps put me in the algorithm. If you guys like this video and you want to see more information going into this, the second and the third volumes, we can definitely do that. Let me know. Leave a red heart in the comment section down below, and I will know that we are going to keep going and trucking through this. And if I get no red hearts, well, then I'll know this video was way too long and I need to go back to flipping tarot cards. I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I want to give you all a big hug. We're going to keep our spirits high. We're going to keep our energy good and our vibrations lifted because we are good, right? Right. Okay. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.